Hello guys, I am Satyam and you are here on our one and all channel, Satyam Ideal Learning. And guys, our today's topic is about agent of pollination. Okay, so we will be discussing about agents of pollination. Agent means which help and pollination means pollination. Pollination is the transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma. So, what are the agents? Agents mean what are the helpers that help in the pollination. So, we will be discussing about that. Main, there are animals, wind and water. These are the helpers. Okay, and we will be discussing about wind pollination, water pollination and insect pollination. Okay, so agents of pollination is our topic. Now come on wind pollination. The first point is wind pollination. Now see guys, wind pollination is also known as anemophily. It is also known as what? Anemophily. Whereas anemos means wind and philos means loving. Okay, and it comes from the Greek word anemos and philos, which means anemos means wind and philos means loving. Now wind pollinated flowers. Wind pollinated flower means the flower which are pollinating with the help of wind. Okay, wind pollinated flowers produce dusty, minute and little pollen grains. So the pollen grains which are produced by wind pollinated flowers are dusty. They are very dusty and they are very minute and little. Okay. Now these produce the wind pollinated flower produce pollen in large amounts. See guys. Now why the pollen are produced in large amounts by wind pollinated flowers? They are produced in large amounts because only few of the pollen get reached to the destination, and the destination is what? The stigma of the flower. So only few of the pollen grains reach to the destination, reach to the stigma of the flower, and most of them are wasted. That is why the wind pollinated flower releases more pollen grains. So the quantity of the pollen grains which are released is more. Okay. Now these produce pollen grains in large amounts. They are small and inconspicuous. So the wind pollinated flower are what? They are small. They are small and inconspicuous means they are not easily noticeable. Okay, so these flowers are not easily noticeable in the plant and they are small also and don't have large showy petal, sweet nectar also. So they do not have showy petal and sweet nectar. Large showy petal and sweet nectar they do not have. Okay, so they are small and inconspicuous means they are not easily noticeable and don't have large, they do not have large showy petal and they do not have sweet nectar also. Okay, and they do not smell also sweet. Now so they do not sweet scent also. The stigmas are often long and feathery. Now what happens? I have told you that from the anther burst and the pollen grains are released, and pollen grains are very light. In the case of wind pollination, pollen grains are very much light. And we already know the pollen grains are very much light. So they will flow in the wind. Okay. So they will flow in the wind and then they will go to the stigma. Only some of them reaches to the destination, to the stigma of the flower. Most of them gets wasted. All the pollens are light. Okay. Now see guys. So the stigmas are often long The stigmas are often long and they are feathery, so that they can so that the pollen grains which are floating in the air can attach to it, to the stigma. Okay, so the stigma are very long and they are feathery. Okay, and the pollen are light. All the pollens are light. This you have to remember. Now, insect pollination we will be discussing about now. We will be discussing about what? Insect pollination. Now, what is insect pollination? At the very first, insect means the pollination is occurring with the help of what? Insects. So, insect pollination is also called what? Entomophily, that I have already underlined for you. Entomo means what? Insect. And philos means what? It means loving. Okay, so entomophily. Insect pollinated flowers produce sticky pollen grains. Now, the insect pollinated flowers are producing the pollen grains, and the pollen grains are very sticky. The pollen grains are very sticky. And what happens? You are attracted to a flower. When you see a flower, how you are attracted to that flower? You see its petals. You see you do smell it. No, you smell it, and then the fragrance is very nice, very sweet fragrance is there. Then you get attracted to that plant, no, that flower, no. This is how the insect is also attracting, by the help of showy petals, large showy petals, and the scent smell, the sweet scent smell. Okay, see, and now what happens when the insect get attracted to it? See, this is the flower and insect is there. Now it has been attracted to this flower. Now it will go here to take nectar. So the insect go to the plant to take nectar. Nectar is very sweet and insect needs. So we are talking about honeybee now. Now honeybee is coming to the plant and it takes nectar. Now what happens when it comes to the plant to take nectar? I have told you that the pollen grains are sticky. So the pollen grains are sticky and then they will attach to the insect's body. So the pollen grains are attached to the insect's body. And now what happens when the insect has taken nectar? Then it will go to another plant. Now when insect's body brushes against stigma, now it has went to another plant. Now the another plant is the female and it has stigma. So when insect's body brushes against stigma, now what do the insects do? It brushes. And when it brushes against the stigma, the pollen grains are attached to the now stigma. So then they will attach to the stigma of the plant, of the female plant. Then pollen grains gets transferred. Now insects are attracted by smell and colored petals. Okay, colored petals. We know that a flower has 4 whorls: calyx, corolla, androecium and gynoecium. And in the corolla, in the whorl of corolla, it forms what? Petals. So corolla forms the petals. So they are colorful petals of plants which are doing insect pollination. So petals are very important in the case of insect pollination and in the pollination. So petals are very important. Okay guys. And the smell. It is a fact that the white flowers, you have seen so many white flowers. The fragrant of the white flowers are very sweet. Okay, so the white flowers has a very sweet fragrance than most of the other flowers. Okay, so it has been found. Now, so they are attracted by the smell and colored petals. Insect pollination has been done now. We are coming on the water pollination. Before that, I have to tell you that in the insect pollination, there is the example Rafflesia. Okay, and in the wind pollination there is example rice, wheat, maize. Okay, so these are the examples of wind pollination. And the Rafflesia, fig. These are the examples. Jasmine also is an example of insect pollination. Now we will be coming on what? Water pollination. Now we will be discussing about water pollination. Water means the pollination is occurring with the help of what? Water. Now, water pollination is also known as hydrophily. Hydro means water and philos means loving. We already know. So, hydrophily. So, water pollination is also known as hydrophily, that you have to remember. Water pollinated flowers are small. These are small flowers and they are colorless and they are also inconspicuous. You cannot easily know, they are not easily noticeable. Okay, so these flowers are not easily noticeable and they are colorless and they are small also. Now, this is the example of the water pollination flowers, plants, Hydrilla and Vallisneria. Okay, so these are the examples, Hydrilla and Vallisneria. We will be talking about the Vallisneria water pollination now only. Wait, both Hydrilla and Vallisneria plants can be either male or female. Can be either male or female. It means that if the Vallisneria or Hydrilla plant is male, then it will bear only male flowers. And if it is female, then it will bear only female flowers. Okay, so it can be either male or female. In Vallisneria, this is must. Okay, male or female, it is must, either male or female. And in Hydrilla, Hydrilla can also bear flowers of both the sexes. Okay, so it can also bear flowers of both sexes on same plant. On the same plant it can bear both sexes also, Hydrilla. Okay, now we will be talking about Vallisneria. Now how the water pollination occurs in Vallisneria. See guys, if this is a male Vallisneria plant and this is a female Vallisneria plant, now what will happen? See, the bud in the female Vallisneria plant, the bud in the female Vallisneria plant will be developing underwater. Okay, so the bud will be developing underwater in the female Vallisneria plant. And what happens? The male flower gets detached from the stem. From the stem of the male Vallisneria plant, it gets detached. The male flower gets detached and floats on the water. So the male is floating on the water. So male is floating on the water. It has been matured and it is floating on the water. So now male flower is floating. And now what happens in female one? Now for maturing the female flower, what happens? The stem is first of all coiled. The stem of the female Vallisneria plant was first of all coiled. Now what happens? It will elongate. It will become long. And then what happens? It will become long and take the flower at the top of it. And the flower is at the surface of the water. And now the flower become mature. And then it will float by attaching with the stem. So the female is floating on the water by remaining attaching to the stem, to the stalk. Okay, so it is floating by attaching with the stalk. And the male is floating without attaching with the stalk. It has been detached from the stem. Okay, so the male is floating and the female is there. Now the male is floating and it has come here. Now when the male flower comes to near to the female flower, then what happens? The anther of the male flower burst. The anther of the male flower, what happens? Burst. And the pollen grains are released. The stigma of the female flower, now the stigma of the female flower is sticky. You have to remember this thing. The stigma of the female Vallisneria plant flower is sticky. Female Vallisneria plant flower is sticky. So the stigma is sticky so that it attaches. So the pollen grains which are released by the anther gets attached to the sticky stigma. Okay, so stigma is sticky in the flower, and this is how the pollination has been occurred. Now the pollen grains are attached to the stigma, and then the pollination has been occurred. Now the fertilization will occur, and the seed, then the fruit will be produced, and this fertilization and the production of food and seed will be occur inside. So what the female plant will do, female Vallisneria plant will now get coiled, and it will come underwater, and then it will do fertilization and the production of fruit. Okay, this is how it has been completed about water pollination also. So bye bye guys.